This is the Hustlers Podcast, featuring Brian Ross, Julien Meyer, Artie Stokey, and Serge Albino.
Morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hustlers. Today is July 28th, 2017. It's 5:34 a.m. here on the East Coast, and I'm joined by my fellow hustlers, Artie Stokey and Serge Albino today. Brian is out sick. How are you guys doing?
What is up? Good morning.
Morning.
Awesome. So today's episode is going to be fun. We picked a topic, I think, that's something that we always mean to discuss and we kind of round about doing. So we decided that today was going to be the day that we actually zone in and focus on that. And so it's going to be on focus, not only on how to focus on certain tasks or certain items, but how to create this kind of mindset of focus to get as much done as possible. Because we find a lot of times as entrepreneurs, as hustlers, when you don't have a boss or somebody right above you, yes, there's a lot of benefits. You can work the hours that you want. You can basically structure your day the way you want to structure your day to build in family time, etc., stuff like that. But one of the real downsides is that you don't have that accountability always, especially when you're working on your own. And so for the solopreneur, for the entrepreneur with a small team, it gets tough. And so we want to discuss that. We want to shed some light on that, kind of our tactics, our tools, our tricks. And so that's what today's show is going to be on. But in true Hustlers tradition, I want to start off with the Hustlers update. And if you remember, that's about 2 minutes that we each give you to update you on our business and our life, to give you some context as to what's going on in the show. So with that in mind, I want to welcome our audience. And Serge, I want you to jump in if you don't mind and just update us what's going on.
Sounds good. Well, I'm a little bummed that I missed last week's Hustlers podcast, but that's okay. I needed to get some sleep in, I guess.
Hey, it's all right. I seem to be racking up the sick days here.
Yeah, you are racking up the sick days, definitely. For me, it's been an exciting 2 weeks. I think the last podcast that we did, we finalized the NASA tech transfer licensing agreement, and we attained an exclusive license for U.S. and Canada for a license for one of the intellectual properties from NASA Kennedy Space Center, with some that was invented by a couple of my colleagues out here, and now we're taking that to market. We've got ammo in our venture now to kind of help wrap up the whole venture capital raise, and we've got some interesting heavy hitters that's coming on board. Can't say too much about those yet, but think the political level, think the big White House level. So the other thing that's pretty exciting also is that there's another side hustle that I'm doing, which is a company called IROC Decontamination. It's part of IROC Health and Safety venture. And it's kind of exciting right now because we're getting all the marketing paraphernalia ready and going. We've got the logos going. So there's a lot of back and forth exchanges of ideas. And it's looking really, really good. We're taking a UV light system that's from Violet Defense and taking it to the public safety sector. So lots of exciting stuff there. We're putting it into correction facilities, fleet vehicles, public school systems. And we feel that this really has it's going to have a lot of impact in the public safety sector. And we're happy. We're excited about it. That's my 2 minutes.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I hope we'll see you in some big Wall Street Journal headlines or something soon, because that sounds like some pretty serious news. So awesome. And with that, Artie, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Well, I don't know. It's always hard to compare after you talk about after Serge.
I know, right? It does make you a little self-conscious with your update.
Well, since I can compare it. It's very similar. We have a lot of deliveries, and I'm sure that some of our deliveries might have went to a White House. Does that compare it? No. Okay, we'll see what we can do. But I try to be outdone. But so in my update, I just basically want to say that because school's starting, I'm very excited. August 25th, students move in, and that definitely changes the dynamic here. on campus. We do probably half the sales we normally would do in the summer, and it doubles when schools, the kids come back. So we're excited about that. So in order for that to happen, we have to do a lot of hiring and prepare for that and train the new managers that we have and kind of let them know that the volume that they're doing is going to, double or triple. So we have that going on. We have just the transfers and the paperwork that you have to do to get my new store up and going with the health department and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of more of the tedious stuff, the stuff that I prefer not to do and delegate, but it's always something we have to get done. And then there's always the marketing side of it, where we're planning some of the events where the DXP car that I've won in the past, we're going to do a upcoming promotion where we have kids sign waivers that anybody wants to try to enter a contest to win free pizza for a year. And then everybody would put their hand on the car, and then whoever lasts the longest is going to win the free pizza for a year. And then just different things like that.
That's one of those genius marketing campaigns you come up with when I ask you for help. That's actually really
something
smart.
like that. Yeah. And yes, we'll be feeding them, and they can have something to drink while they're touching the car. I've heard
you're gonna hose them down in that 100-degree weather in Florida.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like people were saying, like, can they have water? And I guess people pass out and stuff when they do this thing because they're on it so long. I'm like, no, I'm gonna hold the water bottle in front of them and say, it's $7 for the water bottle. Would you like it? Yeah.
Hustler alert.
I think you're the only person that I know that's excited about having kids coming back to school.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, I'm excited for my kids to go to school as well. That'll be good as well.
Yes, they're coming back. What?
Well, awesome. I'm glad things seem to be going well for the both of you. And on my end, on a side note, before I get into my update, I met with two of our other Hustler friends, Hustler Dom and Hustler Julien, and Julien Correa, not myself. And I think what we're going to do, just as an update to our audience, is we're going to start bringing some guests on. We're celebrating our 5th episode today, which is a milestone for us. And we're trying to do this in a season type fashion, just to kind of get our thoughts together and kind of package things properly, maybe update our hardware and our cameras and all that kind of stuff as we progress and as our audience grows. And so one of the things we've been talking about is bringing on guests. So I think that's something that we're going to speak about and hopefully do on one of these episodes coming up. With regards to my update personally, what's going on, I've been focusing a lot on my health and working out and exercising and diet. So I've been a little bit less productive on the business front. Not to say I haven't been doing everything I need to get done, but it's been less of the 18-hour day and more of just back to that 6 to 10-hour day while I get that in check. And, I think that's a sign of one of the things I've learned from this group. I mean, we talk about health, and I think we should do a whole episode on health at some point too. But we talk about health a lot, and Serge and Artie and Brian are all very fit, and I let myself kind of lose a lot of my fitness while I was going through a tough time with my business. And so now I'm like getting to the tail end of that, setting up some other projects. And this is just one that I wanted to tackle because, I mean, even Artie, we spoke on the phone this week. It's kind of like one of those things where at the end of the day, if you come out of one of these businesses successful, if you're about to have heart failure, you're about to pass out, or you can't breathe, it's like it's not even worth making it. And so that's kind of been my focus. That's been where my effort's been. Aside from that, my podcast, Startup Financial News, is really taking off. We just passed the 1,000 listener mark, which means 25,000 impressions since we do 25 shows a month, and getting some big authors. I have Jay Samet coming on, the guy who wrote Disrupt You. And aside from that, I'm thinking about what else? Just more about content, trying to set up a little podcast hosting business and all that. But aside from that, that's kind of my update overall. And hopefully within the next few weeks, I'll be able to update you on my big project and what's going on there. But for the time being, that's where I stand. So,
wait, you're going to have Jay Samet on your podcast?
Yeah, man. I didn't tell you that. I thought I sent it in the group.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
so
man.
Two things, right? I'm going through Disrupt You right now, and I love the book, so give Jay some props for me. And secondly, I don't see a Startup Financial News water jug here in my desk.
Man, now let me tell you in true hustler fashion, I got to be honest.
Talk about holding out.
Hold on a second.
It's like I've never gotten a Domino's pizza delivered at my house just yet, too.
Is your house white?
Serge, this is I was going to meet some people down on Wall Street yesterday at the stock exchange, okay? And I knew if I could get some promo materials down on the floor that there's a chance CNBC or Fox Business, if the guy's walking in, if they were to see the logo. This is from the clearance section at my local supermarket, $5. And I use these 80-cent stickers that I printed up. And I literally went like this. So they cost me $5.80. There was only 3 in clearance at $5, and the rest were like 25. So I only bought the 3, and I just handed them out to the guys.
Nice. That's called hustling.
I was going to drop some of these on the floor at the stock exchange, but I had already gotten in trouble for having a show without it being approved or whatever. So I figured, well, the mug is a way to get around that.
That's cool. That is cool.
But I will send you guys some stuff when I get real shit. So in any case, let's get into today's show. So focus. I think that the best way to kick off today's show is to talk a little bit about routines, both daily and just overall, and how you can use them to effectively chase your goals and follow your dreams. Because I think, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, one of the biggest things that at least I have struggled with, and I would love to know if this is something that you guys share with me, is not having that accountability, not having that boss. And I know there's a lot of negatives to having a boss. There's a lot of downside that comes to, especially a boss that can be a jerk. But one of the things is accountability and knowing that that person above you is responsible in case something goes completely haywire. When you're an entrepreneur, a hustler, a small business owner, you're accountable for everything. If something goes wrong, it's 100% your fault. If today's Tuesday and you have no set ideas to what you have to get done, you can go the whole day without doing anything because it takes you all day to figure out what you have to get done. And so I think that that's one of those trade-offs that you have to accept when you're playing this game. And so, I mean, Artie, why don't you kick things off on this discussion with the whole not having a boss thing and, combine that with routines and all that. And then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about all that.
All right. Well, number one, let me state that I do like not having a boss.
I think we all do. It'd be
outside of the wife. So I guess essentially I do have a boss, but exactly. So, as far as a routine, I think for me, the easiest thing is just to kind of do like a to-do list I usually probably prepare it the night before and have it, whether it's in my phone or on my calendar. And when I get to work, I just try to chip away at it. I just start with the hardest goal first. And I feel like the more weight you can lift at the beginning of the day kind of makes the rest of your day flow a little better. But I am definitely one that does not have a very big attention span. So, it's one of those things for me that I like to kind of bounce around from one thing to another. So when I have that list, I can kind of stay focused in and erase it when it's done, and keep after that. That's, if I don't have a 5 or 6 things to do, it could turn into 20 things to do and never finish any of them. Kind of like my books. That's why I went to Audible. But it's one of those things where if I just take one in, zone in, knock it out, next, and I do a little better that way.
And Serge, I think you have a different approach. I mean, talk about the boss thing, but then talk about the what we were speaking about before, the one thing approach.
Yeah, so the beautiful thing, or the ironic thing really, about not having a boss, right, is you get to have 1,000 or 100 bosses, right? Because every single client, every single partner, every single strategic partnership becomes kind of like your boss. And I guess if you're not disciplined in looking at it that way, you could come off as this, unfocused, kind of arrogant entrepreneur that spends his day at Starbucks, and that's it, right? So, as far as for me, a routine for me is, it's a one thing kind of deal, right? I wake up one day every morning, and I go through my daily routine, my morning routine. And I basically, actually the night before, I've already planned one thing that if I was not to get anything done that day except for that one thing, that's what I'm going to focus in on. So sometimes the day starts out for me after the morning routine at, say, 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe sometimes at 10 because I have to take the kids to swimming practice. But once I get into that office, everything's focused on that one thing. Everything's focused on that one thing. And if it's where it gets tricky is that if it's that one thing that takes possibly all day or a couple days to do, at least I get it going, and then I plan the next day. You know, if I basically say, okay, I'm only 50% into it, I can't get it done today, I call a timeout. I put it aside. I plan my next day and say, hey, take this from 50% to 75% tomorrow, and I focus on the rest of the things that I have to do. Because I mean, like right now, I got kind of 3 companies going, so you have to be able to be dedicated and focused enough to be able to get stuff done. And for me right now, that one thing is one thing for each company. So
now that strategy I actually like, because I was going to say I'm kind of a hybrid of the two of you. I have learned going through this time with my main business, Blurtbox, that the 1% better every day compounds to a much higher number than setting out to be 50% better at the end of the month. It's way, way, way more efficient to figure out what's that one baby step that you can take today, because the 100 baby steps actually get you out the door versus the being so worried about how are we going to get to 100 steps the entire month to where you only take 30 steps. So Serge, we had like long discussions on that whole thing months ago, but I totally and fully agree with you that one thing and that 1% better, where if you have nothing else, you feel achieved for the day, is so important. Because what I've been doing, and you know, you use the strategy that I haven't used, and it's something that now that you mention it, I need to. I'm running multiple companies and projects now myself, including the show and a podcast and all that. And I have a tool. I have this self journal, which, as a side note, I am a sponsor or whatever, an advertiser for. But I really do love this thing. What it does is it gives me this space to write down the 3 things that I want to get done today. And if I get those 3 things done, nothing else matters. It gives me a space for a to-do list. And if I get I can write 50 things in the to-do list, but I feel like oftentimes with the to-do list, it can always keep going and going and going and going and going. And so these 3 things they call them your wins for the day. And so as long as I get my 3 things done, I know that I can go to bed and I have my win for the day. And I think that that's important, because when you don't have telling you someone what to do, you also don't have someone patting you on the back and rewarding you for doing a good job. And so you need to kind of pat yourself on the back and give you that self-reward in order to keep going. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's a psychological piece of this. There's a psychological piece of this game to where you really do need to find that balance between, okay, here's what I have to get done, and here's my reward. And yes, now it's okay to, at a Tuesday at 3 p.m., take an hour to watch my favorite Netflix series, or to go pick up my kids. Or you know what? I can take the whole rest of the evening off because I did the most difficult things I've ever had to do from 8 to 10 a.m. this morning. And I think that that's how you find that balance between accountability, but also rewarding yourself. Now, the to-do list side, I think, Artie, you said something that's so, so, so important. Serge, you echoed it. And it's something that I just started doing now that I'm kind of getting back into this really good headspace and into fitness and all that, which is planning the day the night before, or at least very early morning when you wake up at 5 a.m. I haven't done that for months. I haven't done that, honestly, probably in the last 9 months. This is the first week, because of that journal, that I've gotten back to actually planning out my day. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it provides some structure. And it gives you an idea as to, okay, well, I know I have to do this, and I have to be in these locations at these time. In between, instead of having this like downtime or whatever where you don't know, okay, what should I do now? What should I get done now? It just gives you, it's how to be mindful with your time. It's how to focus on, okay, what are the things that are, yes, going to be the most productive for me? And so, you know, with that, I want to have a little bit of a discussion on that, selfishly, a little bit, honestly, because I want to know, when it comes to planning out your day, guys, right? When it comes to zoning in and focusing on, for the entrepreneur who has really 18 hours of working potential, what are your strategies to when you plan it out? Because what I've had to do is I literally have a timetable now to where I block out time, and I even block out time for commuting. How do you guys do it?
Yeah, so I've kind of tried multiple things as well. I've tried out just doing the fly-by-wire aspect, and I've tried blocking it out in hour by hour aspect. It's funny because like there was I think an article on one of the media channels not too long ago about how Elon Musk blocks his day out in 15-minute increments, I believe, and I think that's good for him. I think you need to find your own style, right? So for me, 3 companies going. I got a engineering consulting company that's still fairly busy. Got IROC Health and Safety, which is starting to boom right now. And we're getting into our early sales aspects of things and planning out the trade shows for the next year, and a little bit of cap raise there. Then there's EcoSpheres, which is just a complete beast. I think you have to first start off with is that, okay, in my given, and let's not go crazy, right? Let's not even think 18 hours a day. Let's say you just have 12 hours that day. How many hours do you want to focus on certain businesses, right? So if I basically dissect it, where if I want to focus 60% on eco, 30% on decon, and 10% on caveat engineering, that's kind of like the framework that I'm going with, right? And then I start dissecting my 12-hour day now so that it's a 60-30-10 mentality. And I've always liked that 60-30-10 mentality. It's one of those tools that my mentor, Dr. Trevor Murdoch, has imparted on me, but not necessarily for a time frame perspective. He imparted it on me from a sales and invoicing perspective. You always want to do a 30-60-10. What's his strategy, right? I just kind of converted that to how I do my daily focus.
I just wrote down, on a side note, I just wrote down 60-30-10 because I love that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, because now that doesn't, that gives you the framework, and it's a lot easier, but it's still structured, right? And then from there, you could dissect it up as in your 60%. Is that going to be a minute by minute? Is that going to be every 15 minutes? Is that going to be an hour by hour? Because now you're looking at what? That's a 7 hours, 4 hour, 10 hour, comparison, right? So now it gets real. You have 7 hours to do eco. I have 7 hours to do eco. I have 4 hours to do IROC decontamination. And I have 1 hour to do caveat engineering, right? So if I only had 1 hour to do caveat engineering and I need to be focusing on client follow-up, sales, that's all I can do, right? But what if I have projects and I actually got to get stuff done for caveat engineering? Then I may pivot that, and I basically on Tuesday, day 2, I may look at it from a standpoint of caveat is 60%, eco is 30%, and decon is 10%.
Right. And I think that's a phenomenal strategy, especially when you're running multiple projects, which most of us tend to. I think that's part of our nature. And I mean, Artie, thoughts?
Well, as far as the time constraints, I like the 15-minute thing, if you could count on everybody. And what I mean by that is, like, when I do interviews, I can pretty much count that the people are going to be there on time. So I can schedule interviews 15 minutes apart with my manager interviewing as well. Because what I mean by that is, in the summer here, we probably hire 25 to 30 people for the next school year. Plus I have a new store, so we're hiring quite a bit right now. And I can schedule them 15 minutes. But if I do like any other school, if I'm trying to schedule anybody else, as far as like marketing or advertising or anything else that I'm trying to do on campus, I have to schedule them basically 2-hour gaps because to use the time that we're going to use for the meeting, half of them show up late or forget about the meeting, and then you have to reschedule. So it's a a lot of it is counting on other people to be able to structure your day correctly to knock it out. So what I do now is I'll schedule a meeting for, let's say, 9 o'clock, and I won't have my next one till 11, but I'll have a backup plan. So if they don't show, I can still be getting something done. And I think that's probably the best. That's worked out the best for me.
That's a very, very good point. And that's so true. I mean, I think with the whole 15 minutes thing, 15 minutes, I'm sure the way he, Elon or whatever blocks it out is so that he has ideas as to what he wants to do out those 15 minutes. But I know for a fact he travels from LA to San Francisco almost daily. And so with that flight being 45 minutes, security, all that kind of whatever, I'm sure there's time in there where it's not like a 15-minute interval where he blocks it out to, let's say, a 30 or an hour interval. And so, but I think that the trick there is, yeah, you block it out, but like Artie said, have the backup plan, because it's true, you get no shows. I mean, and especially when you're playing our game, the unfortunate side of it is a lot of people don't take your meetings seriously. It's like you're the guy that has to go out there and try and get this meeting with this person or with this executive. You're not bringing them any business. You're not bringing them. You're trying to really get into their good graces. And so I've had that happen to me a lot where the person doesn't see you as important as they are. And so it's perfectly okay if they just cancel or don't show up. And I mean, I've been left out in the cold so many times, and it's nothing to complain about. It's part of the game. And because it's part of the game, you have to develop a strategy for it. And so that strategy of having a backup, Artie, can you speak for like another minute just on how you actually plan the backup? Because I think that's something that I would get a lot out of, that everybody watching would get a lot of. Like, how does that work?
Well, actually, Serge, he mentioned a little bit, but how he had said that he starts his day. Yeah, he should probably remind us that he starts his day through meditation, and like I do it through exercise. So for me, 2 major things for me to focus on my whole day. Let's start with exercise. So if I get training for an Ironman and I get that workout in the morning, when I go to work, when the negative things do happen, like someone doesn't show up, it doesn't reflect to me as a negative thing. Because I believe that that exercise puts you in such a headspace that you're just willing to knock out all the negativity things that happen in a day. It almost comes expected, like what's going to come at me today. And it's just a lot easier to focus in on, seeing the light and the positive things and go towards that. That for me, that's what it does. But as far as the backup, it's just that to-do list. I hate to keep saying it, to a to-do list, because in my home life, I absolutely hate the to-do list. So much so that when my wife came home, I replaced our main fridge in the kitchen with one of those little mini fridges that you've seen like in the dorm room. And then she came home and she's like, "What the hell is this?" And I said, "Well, I just wanted my list to be a little bit shorter."
Oh my
so
God.
I got I'm just kidding. All right.
Oh my God.
Too early.
Time to move on. Oh God.
I'll be here all week.
All right. Well, before the mini fridge joke, you were on a roll, and I was going to say you actually mentioned a good transition point, because obviously today's show is on focus, and so part of covering daily routines has been to showcase, how you can implement these strategies to have a better, more focused day. And I don't want to speak on meditation too much because we've done that in another episode. But Serge, on a side note, I have started using Headspace pretty religiously to just kind of get in that mind space. I don't think it's not something that a lot of people understand. It's like 3 to 10 minutes max. And what it is, there's nothing scary or time consuming really about meditation. It's just a way to like sit back and accept and be peaceful about the fact that, yeah, things are going to be thrown your way, and that's okay. That's how life is. There's billions of other people that we share this earth with. And so you just have to learn to kind of let those things happen. And so I think that's a super important piece on how to start your day, which we've spoken about in the past. But on the focus side, Serge, on the focus side, how do you really determine, and the 60-30-10 was a good intro to how you're focusing your time, but how do you focus your energy? How do you focus your skill set? How do you focus, okay, today am I going to make calls to all my hustler friends because I want to solve this issue? Or is today an execution day where I just have to literally sign checks and do paperwork? I mean, talk a little bit on that aspect of the focus when it comes into honing in on really your responsibilities.
So I think a part of that before I deep dive into the responsibilities is that you also have to kind of have an idea of your own how can I say this? How you do things and what inspires you, right? So, and what I mean by inspires you is that sometimes, for me, I'll give you an example. For me, is that my AM routine up to probably 1-2 o'clock ish, I have to be in the office, right? I got to get my stuff done. I got to be in the office. I got to be banging out the stuff that needs mental focus between the hours of, say, the AM period, say the 9 to 1 period before I go to lunch. And then in the afternoon, I have to be in an area where there's a lot of white noise. So I'm either at a coffee shop a block down the road, or I'm at a coffee shop all the way across town, right? I need
Let
to
me-
be in.
Let me jump in there, because why is that? Because I need that same thing. Can you explain why that is? Because I was trying to explain this to somebody that, yeah, it's fucking lonely sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's lonely. It's as the terminology we come back to it again, is that it's lonely up top, right? Well, when you're running a business, you're your own leader, right? And you're the only leader of your company, and of a company of one, for example, right? So it is lonely up top. So you need that vibe. You need that vibe and flow from everybody else that could be hustling, or just could be grabbing a bite to eat or to grab a coffee, and you need the interaction. So it's a flow and effect. It's I go back to the martial arts aspect of it. It's, you got to feel that energy in order to kind of put more fuel in your tank and to make you keep going, right? It's kind of like what we're doing with podcasts, right? In order for us to kind of step up our level to a higher point, and it's only us in our respective areas, and we don't get to see much of each other. Well, we put it out on blast in the public sector, then I guess we got to do it, right? Because now everybody knows about it. So if I basically say here that, I want to clean up the Hudson River as my BHAG, I guess I got to do it.
That's it. Now you have the accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that highlights a very important point on focus in this game specifically, because focus in a lot of environments means you go in and you get the tasks that are assigned to you that day done. In the hustler type situation, the self-starter, the entrepreneur, it means you create the tasks like we've been talking about with your daily routine, your to-do list. And then not only do you create the tasks, then you execute on the task. And so really focusing in on two things you said, Serge. Number one, just making sure that you know your own schedule and routine, that by 1 o'clock, I will not be productive in this space or this setting anymore. I need to find that white noise. That's a very important piece, is being self-aware and understanding what you need to operate better. Because a lot of people will tell you that that's bullshit, but I completely and 100% agree with Serge. You have to get into that headspace. That's a very important piece of this game. And the second piece, the real big piece of what you were saying, is that accountability piece. Listen, yeah, we don't have a boss. Like we said, that's a very positive thing. But the negative thing is that you don't have that accountability. You don't have that sense of, oh, this person's responsible, so I can just take it easy. And no, it all falls on you. And so, Serge, the whole thing of using your friends or your network or other people that are playing this game the same way we're using the hustlers, which is what we're trying to do here. Use a group like that for the accountability, because that's really going to help you to focus on what you need to get done. Because then you're going to have somebody that calls you out on it. They're going to say, hey, listen, did you ever clean up the Hudson River? Why not? What happened? That's kind of, Serge, that's a little bit, that's out there, man. I don't think many people watching are going to be able to relate to cleaning up the Hudson River.
Yeah, I grew up in New York. I grew up in the city, right there in Roosevelt Island in Astoria. So big shout out to my peoples up there. That's a dirty river.
the Hudson, for those of you that don't know, when you're growing up, it's like, don't jump in there. The only thing in there is dead bodies. And on top of that, what they always tell you is that if the firefighters, this is how your mom scares you. You can't drink water or go fishing in the Hudson, because the firefighters, when they have to dive in, they're in full hazmat dry suits. It's crazy. It's nuts.
Yeah.
When they do rescue missions, it's nuts. If you've ever seen it, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. But and then you have these idiots, these tourists jet skiing on it, and you're like, man, I wouldn't want to get any of that water in my mouth until Serge cleans it up. Artie, focus.
Oh, that's funny. You make a joke and then you say Artie. That's funny that you put those two together.
Mental association.
But I'm telling you, I can even see it in interacting with you, Julian, that now that you've started exercising, getting a trainer, it really does change a lot of how you do things. So kudos to you, man, for sticking with it.
Feeling way better. It means a lot. Thank you.
Right. For me, focus is a tough one because what I notice is obviously I get distracted a lot, squirrel, that kind of thing. I mean, certain people have a different, so, whether it's ADD or, everybody's got whether you've been diagnosed with something or not, most entrepreneurs have some form or fashion of, that they can be distracted easily motivated, not so much easily discouraged. Some do, but for me, I think what I also like to mention about focus is that I try to go all in on my strengths. So if I'm really in that creative type where I create, maybe let's say it's a marketing piece and I try to put it out there and I get it all to the point where I got to send it to the advertiser and do the paperwork side, I might delegate the paperwork side to somebody else. Whatever I'm working on, I'll do 80-90% of it and let the 10% that I'm not good at or doesn't interest me, I try to push that to another person to take care of, if that makes sense. Just to, I'm trying to get better at finishing the task rather than just executing 85% of the next level. Sense?
Right.
But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the whole thing that you said about distraction, right? I think that comes with the territory because, for example, I could plan my day out the night before, or I could plan it out, at 5 a.m., whatever it is. The moment I get into that office, I have somebody calling me, whether it's an investor, I have a fire to put out, I have a tax issue, I got a legal issue. It's like you said, not many are easily discouraged. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's very easy. Yes, most entrepreneurs are optimists and have a very high EQ. But the discouraged piece, after a while of getting beat down and beat down and beat down, the focus piece is completely gone because you just kind of wake up expecting, well, what's today going to hit me with? And it took for me to get to that breaking point to realize my strategy, which is that everything is an experience and you can just be happy and enjoy it all. But I had a very unique experience to get to that point. So speak a little bit on when you're discouraged, when you do feel all these things, when you're putting out fires and nothing seems to be coming, how do you focus then?
So I'll field that one real quick, Julian, because so to me, I come back to one of your comments before is that or your questions is how do you pat yourself on the back, right? So, the funny thing about humans as creatures is that we long for success, right? We long for any kind of gains, right? And any kind of gains is still a gain. Whether it's planning of I'm going to wake up every morning and I'm going to have a glass of water before I get through my day, and you do it, that's a gain, right? That's a very, very simple gain. That's a very simple pat on, and then you get to pat yourself on the back for that. Every Friday I get up at 4:30 in the morning to make sure I'm ready for the Hustlers podcast. And if I could do that, that's a gain, right? Every night, if I could plan out the one thing that I'm going to do the next day, that's a gain. So going into the office, if I basically, outside of the one thing, my other things is making sure I got my invoices in to clients X, Y, and Z. And I got inquiry emails sent out to strategic partner A, B, and C. Those are all gains. So I think what's important, especially if if the world is starting to hit you upside the head, with a brick, you have to kind of take a step back and basically say, okay, maybe it's not a good time right now to go after my BHAG. Right, and for people that don't understand the terminology BHAG, it's your big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And maybe it's time now to focus on the little things.
Yes.
Right. Maybe it's just I'm going to get into the office at 9:30 every single day for the next not even for the next week, just tomorrow. I'll be in there at 9:30. That way you're focused that day. You get your wins, and it's a domino effect. In order to get number 2, what do you got to get? Number 1, right? In order to get a second win, you got to get a first win.
Amen.
Right? So
I do want to feed off that, because everything you're saying is so true. And it took a book, which is also a speech, to drive that point home for me. And it does change everything. When you have that one thing that you can celebrate, you can get to that second thing. When you have that second thing that you can celebrate, you can get to that third thing. And there's a speech, and I'm going to do something that we normally don't do on the Hustlers. I'm going to put this at the end of our video. It's a speech from Admiral William H. McRaven. And it's a speech called Make Your Bed. And there's a coinciding book also called Make Your Bed, which you can literally listen to in maybe an hour and a half on Audible if you listen to 2 times speed. Changed how I operate on a daily basis. It focuses on the psychology behind the first thing you do in the morning is to make your bed. Psychologically, you've already completed something for the day. It's a small task that really only takes you 5 minutes. When you get home, regardless of how bad your day was, you have something to celebrate. You have something to say, I'm proud that I did that. And so it's not about making your bed by ripping the covers back up. It's about making it perfect, just like they do in the Army, just like they do in the Navy. Perfect corners, perfectly tucked in. Then you can come home, and no matter how bad the day was, a little smile will pop up and say, yeah, I did that this morning. And I think the psychological aspect that you're touching on, Serge, is that when you get to those celebration points, when you get number 1, you can celebrate, and then you can focus on number 2. And the show being on focus, that's how you get a lot of stuff done in a day, in a week, in a month. It compounds. You know, it's like this whole fitness thing I'm doing. You don't start out the first day by losing the 30 pounds you want to lose, but you lose 1 pound over the next 2 days or whatever it is. Then you feel really good. And then you just keep going. You have to, but you know, there's the motivation piece you got to keep up with, but celebrating the wins is a key part to focus. Am I wrong, Artie?
No, not at all. Well, let's get back to like the make my bed. I like the whole exercise in the morning, or something as simple as having a task done. I mean, obviously, if I'm making my bed, I'm appeasing my wife, which is always going to help as well. But let's lead into like the Hustlers. Even when I do this show, no doubt when I get to work, I don't know if it's just like the motivation from all of your guys' other businesses and trying to keep up with the Joneses within our little group. I'm not sure, but when I get to work, Fridays are a knockout day for me. Like, I feel like I accomplished the world on Fridays, because we've kind of set the tone for our day today about the hustling, that aspect of it. And I feel like it does help me become more focused when I am at work.
I want to let you keep going on that, but I want to jump into it. Ever since we've started the weekly show, I've noticed big time on Fridays, they're so much more productive than what I anticipate they're going to be. And I'm always tired when I wake up for the show. Usually go to bed late-ish anyway. And so I'm usually tired when I wake up, but it's like after 20 minutes of even just being on this show, I know exactly what you're talking about. And so how does that relate to, you know, the focus aspect? Artie, I'll let you finish that off.
No, well, I was pretty much done on that, but I mean, there's a couple other things I wanted to add. I know this is going to sound really simple. I know I mentioned exercise a lot, but honestly, whenever I go into a big meeting, or even for this show, if you can drink some coffee, and it is amazing for me. I'm serious. I know it sounds simple, but for me, the way my mind is, if I drink coffee, I am more focused on that project. So throughout the day, I probably do drink more coffee than I should, but I do think it is one of those stimulants that helps me personally focus. And also, secondly, I just wanted to mention, I know that Serge mentioned the dominoes effect. I'm not paying for the advertising for that. Just so, no.
Somebody give him weaker coffee in the morning.
Yeah, it is hard for me to focus. Can you tell?
My God.
So let me chime in real quick on that coffee comment, Julian. So, you know, was myself and 7 other buddies this past February. I've always wanted to go to the Dry Tortugas. It's one of those lifelong goals for me. And I've kind of scoped it out and figured out, okay, we could drive down to Key West. We could take a Yankee Freedom down there and take the boat over. It's like $190. And then you're there for 4 hours and you come back. And I'm like, it kind of sucks. It's only $190, drive all the way down to Key West. then found out there's like camping, right? So we decided to camp for 3 nights, 4 days in the Dry Tortugas, which is primitive as can be. It's like people don't know where it is. It's 70 miles west of Key West and probably 60 miles north of Cuba, right?
Oh, wow.
Fort Jefferson was the largest fort that was built in the U.S., and it's there. That's where a Booth, I forget his first name is William Booth, I believe. The doctor that was part of the Lincoln assassination, way back when, was imprisoned there. So a lot of historical significance to it. So we ended up going to the Dry Tortugas for 3 nights, 4 days in February. Completely disconnected from Wi-Fi, completely disconnected from the internet, no mobile signal whatsoever. And the only time that we really took out our phones was to take pictures. It was amazing, right? So, but coming back to the coffee comment is that, after 2 days in this primitive island where all we're pretty much doing is just, having a good old time, talking, actually communicating with one another, being able to talk life stories and being able to really interact, right, as humans, as friends. The being remote portion kind of wears down on you, right? You don't have running water. You have porta potties. You have no cell signals. You don't have any TV to watch. You're just pretty much kind of just doing your day. And I always remembered that every single time we woke up in the morning or in the afternoon where we commune to the table and somebody hit the jet boil to make a pot of coffee, that smell, that aroma, the temperature as it hits your lips, it brings you home, right? So it may not be coffee for some, it may be Irish, tea for others. Right. Hell, it's beer for me in the middle of the night, if I'm working late. You got to kind of find things that would help you hit your stride. Tasks done, and you could get your wins, and you could get yourself that pat on the back.
Well, you said 2 big things. I think first is that you find maybe something that's your reward in a sense, whether it's, I think a lot of people don't understand the psychological benefit that you get. Let's say you're a dorm room entrepreneur or a closet entrepreneur, a home entrepreneur, whatever it is. When you don't have that human connection, a reward, it doesn't need to be coffee or a beer or a tea or anything like that. Your reward could be getting up, going to the store and spending $1.75 on a bottle of sparkling water at CVS, just so you could have a conversation with somebody and change your environment. And so I think that's what we're trying to say here is find a way to, in a sense, hey, if Artie did a good job, maybe he's going to celebrate with a cup of coffee. If Serge did a good job, maybe he knows, okay, this evening I'm going to have a beer. And it's like, find those key pieces that can help you celebrate on your own, because it's very important. But Serge, one of the big points you brought up, and I'm going to cut it here because we're at the end of our show, so we're going to wrap up in a second. I think we need to do an entire show, literally an entire show, on the power of disconnecting, on using the airplane mode on your phone, on turning the cell phone off at 11 p.m., on maybe getting away on a cruise, for example, where you have no cell service, where you have limited Wi-Fi, because there is a huge benefit to having that time and to refocusing in that sense. And so we need to do a show on that. There's a lot going on in the world of disconnecting. This is not the time or the place to do it, because we are at the end of today's show, ladies and gentlemen, and we will do a show on that, hopefully, in this first season. So we'll bring that to you guys shortly. But Artie and Serge, I want to thank you for making the time this morning, early to be here. I want to give you an opportunity, like we usually do at the very end, to have your 30 seconds each for closing thoughts. And we'll go round robin. Since we started intros with Serge, we will start these with Artie. So Artie, last 30 seconds, and then Serge, it's your turn.
All right. Well, I like the fact of the disconnecting factor. My wife actually taught me a life lesson on that, because whenever I would go on a boys trip, if we'd go to Las Vegas, she would always call me and be like, call me when you get there. What are you guys doing tonight? And I felt like I was calling her like every 12 hours to check in. not so much as a babysitter, but she always wanted to know what was going on. And when you're in Vegas, you kind of lose track of time. So she would get mad because I didn't call her at the specific time, or, dinner, we're having dinner at midnight, so I was a little bit screwed up. And she's a little bit smarter than me. So she decided to go on a cruise with her girls' trip. So she's like, yeah, I'm going to be doing this and that. And then she texts me sent me a picture as they're entering the boat, and I didn't hear from her for a week. So she gets back, I'm like, what the hell? I have to contact you every 24 hours and that's it? And she's like, oh, I was on a cruise, it had no service. And I'm like, you're good.
Yeah. No, and I think it's what you highlighted is a good point, is that sometimes we allow ourselves to be accessible too often. That's, situation where you have to text your kids or your wife, that's different. But I think business wise, there's actually a lot of merit to what you just said, which is sometimes you have to say, listen, I'm not available between these hours. No, I'm, and I purposely don't answer people sometimes, and people get mad at me for it. And I say, you know what? I only have so much brain power. For me to take the brain power to answer your stupid group chat or this thread that you have going on, which means absolutely nothing, which brings no benefit, which is really just taking away brain power or stress from the stuff I actually have to get done. There's a lot of merit to what you just said. So we do have to do an episode on that. But Serge, last 30 seconds on focus on today's show on anything you want.
So yeah, definitely. I love the idea. I'd say let's do it next week, right? On disconnecting. But I love the whole aspect of the Hustlers, where we initially intended to talk about things that towards business and the hustle, right? But we're in our 5th episode, and it seems like the focus that we've been going after, and we've just kind of been doing this on the fly on a week-to-week basis because we want it to be grainy for the audience. This has been not the business aspect of it, but really what's in the center, right? And what's in the center is the hustler, and what can lead to a successful business or an unsuccessful business is the mindset and the mindset of the hustler. And if he's not in that right frame of mind, things can go awry so quickly. And I love the fact that we even though we're supposed to talk about business and the financials and the marketing and the technology, we've been kind of just focused on the first one, on numero uno, right? Which is the guy. So that's cool. I love it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, again, one of the biggest things that we've been trying to do with the Hustlers is it's not a show like a lot of the bullshit you see on YouTube, which is this super highly produced, the guys that are paying $5,000 an episode to get these things done, and they look like TV shows and they're the pop star entrepreneur types. That's not us. This is just, it's low quality for a reason. We're doing this on our laptops at 5:30 in the morning. Nobody has spent any money to do this. We have literally one software we need to record the screen. That's it. And even that's on a double free trial, which we've learned how to work our magic on. So it's not like, this is not a show where we ever plan to come in and portray ourselves as anything different than what we are. And so I think that for my last 30 seconds, I just want to highlight the importance to what Serge and Artie both echoed, which is that, look, at the end of the day, what it comes down to, from a focus standpoint, from a motivation standpoint, from a drive standpoint, is in some way, shape, or form, you have to make sure that you're taking care of your health mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and make sure that when you go into a certain situation, you set yourself up to win. And so, yeah, Serge, I think you're right. That's what the Hustlers is here for. The Hustlers is here to just say, look, this is what it's really like. This is what it's like being in the dirt. This is what it's like hustling and grinding away. And so as we continue with these episodes, and, to everybody out there in the audience, we want to thank you for tuning in as always, because obviously shows are way better when we get feedback from the audience, and we've started to get a little bit from you. So thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. But as we continue, not only do we want to bring in guests, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, but in our 2nd season, we're planning on starting a business together, the 4 of us, to use all of our talents. And I think that doing that with you guys, with the audience, so you can watch it, is going to be a very unique experience, because there's a lot of this BS that we're seeing on Facebook ads, that we're seeing on YouTube pre-roll ads, where there's these guys that they have a camera, they hold their camera up, their little Canon like this, and they videotape. You guys want to learn how to make $2,000 a day? I'm going to show you how to get an extra $20,000 a month in disposable income. It's a scam. It's a scam. It's all a scam. That's what it is. But the Hustlers, we're not selling you a webinar. We're not doing any of that BS, because that just doesn't work. What we're doing here is just trying to create this community. And so we want to bring you in into real life experience and show you what that's going to be like to build that business as we do it together. Because it's not going to be all roses. It's going to be plenty of times where it's in the dump, where it's in the dirt. But I really do want to mention that so that we keep our audience engaged and hopeful that that's going to happen, because that's going to be a very unique experience that we haven't seen anybody else do on the internet. So with that, I want to close out today's show. Serge, Artie, I want to thank you again for making the time this morning to be here. I know it's super early. Brian, wishing you well. Can't wait to get you on next week's episode. We all just earned a sick day. So just guys, keep a tally your sick days somewhere. I've been writing them down in a notebook. And finally, one more big thank you to the audience. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Friday. Remember to execute, get your stuff done, and focus in on what you need to get done today. And we will see you on next week's episode 6.
Thanks for listening to the Hustlers Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to get the latest episodes.